Hello everyone, this is Darius from the Shot Caller, joined here by YamatoCannon for a very first iteration of the Esports Interview, a very big title of course, but we decided that especially during off-season and times where there isn't a competition, we should be doing more content, more in-depth content, and the intention is to do, 1.5 hour interviews with important figures within the esports scene, not just League of Legends, but focus on it, of course. And I'm joined by the ever so popular, ever so happy to do interviews, YamatoCannon. How are you doing today?
I'm quite good. I am enjoying off season. I think during season I get to sleep so little because there's so much to do, and Riot keeps releasing champions like Silas and dropping mad patches on us. So it's good to sleep, but at the same time it drives me crazy not to be busy, and I just want to get back into it. So it's a double-edged sword.
Want to get back into it, of course. Very excited for MSI. This might release after MSI. Any predictions on how it's going to go for you?
I think, I tweeted out that G2 is going to win everything, and with the way they played against Origin, I was very excited because I felt like they solved a lot of their problems. The problems was always that they were winning because they're better, and they didn't really play in a very smart way together to just close out games. And I think against OG in those 6 games, they really showed that. And the only thing that's worrying for me about G2 is the fact that Mickey X has an injury, and if he's not 100%, I don't have the same faith in G2, of course. So I'm thinking either IG is going to win it all, because I think China is by far the most superior region, or G2 manages to bamboozle them. And then there's, of course, SKT. I have to mention them because in best of 5 scenarios, in tournament scenarios, they are always the team that figure out the meta, figure out what everyone should play, and I think that's also scary. So to summarize, very scary tournament. I think IG is the favorite. G2 can get second place, I believe. Depends on Mickey X's overall form.
So, one thing I forgot to mention at the start, what is like the general intention behind this? Because I also was busy during off-season, trying to get sponsors, unsuccessfully so far. Let's see how that goes. But I reflected on my interviews and my work so far, and I realized one thing, that good conversations really can't happen within like a 5, 10, maybe 15-minute time frame, especially like after a game, like a good conversation. A good conversation, in my opinion, happens when you meet for coffee, or you're drunk after a party and you're just standing outside. You're having those discussions, those good ones. So that's kind of the intention behind all of this. We are sitting at a cat cafe here, and I chose a cat cafe for 2 reasons. One, because you have 2 very beautiful cats, which you now get to plug on Instagram.
I have to plug. I don't want to expose them. They don't have a choice in this, but okay, you put me on the spot. It's Cookie and Muffin, my 2 little angels. They make my day brighter every day. They wake me up 5 a.m, but it just doesn't matter, because actually during off season I stay up longer than 5 a.m, so that doesn't happen. But during season they do it, and it's hard to have any negativity towards them. They just, whenever they're around, it's very easy to be happy and positive.
Cats do have, in fact, a relax, like they automatically, their presence gives out happy, whatever the chemicals in the head. Yeah. Totally didn't fail chemics class, by the way. But yeah, the intention is also to learn more about you and your ways in the industry so far, and also to reflect a bit on what has happened so far. You're from Sweden. You're the son of original Arabic immigrants, or like which part of the world?
So my mother is Polish, and my father is from Palestine.
Oh, okay.
And I was born and raised in Sweden. I'm also part German, so I'm a cocktail of culture has been brewed up, and I grew up. I grew up in a way where I had everything I needed, so I've been very fortunate.
Very fortunate. What was growing up in Sweden like for you specifically?
I was like in my school, like I was the foreign kid, Even though I was born and raised, I was the foreign kid. Kids can be very mean. I spent most of my time alone. I figured out things on my own, and I kind of enjoyed it. I like to reflect on things and to think by myself, and I'm still kind of that way. And I think something that has shaped me big time is what I hated at the time was how much my father forced me to work. So basically, he pulled me to his workshop. I had to work, and at the time I was like, I just want to play games. I hate this, but it really, really made me appreciate hard work, and it actually gave me discipline. So I am happy I suffered when I was younger.
Important life lessons learned early that now help you along the way. How much did it suck to have your birthday on the 30th of December, given that, a lot of people are on holidays, a lot of people are away? Was that an issue?
Well, whenever I complained, I always got, the fireworks tomorrow, they're for you. I got this bullshit thrown at me. And then you have this connection. Oh, Christmas, if it's Christmas and it's next to your birthday, you get less gifts. No matter how you put it, there's something in the universe that makes you get less gifts. Yeah. That's always the case. But birthdays were never really like a big deal for me. It would be more fun to have it more in season, maybe like, let's say I was in a big arena when it was my birthday, to get those social media points, But beyond that, it's okay.
It was fine. A while ago, you did a very interesting slingshot questionnaire. That was in February 2017. Of course, Slingshot since then has closed down, which sucks. Because it was a very good questionnaire. I remember reading it back in the day and it was very enjoyable. So if you want the shot code not to shut down, then you know what to do. It was written by Vince Nairn, and I'm going to use some of his questions. And
check my answers?
Yeah, no, I'm not going to check your answers. I want to see how much you've changed since, because this is 2 years ago, or like 2.5 almost. Okay. So the first question was, what was your perfect idea of perfect happiness? And you said that the understanding of the concept that I am in control of my life, and also being in control of the things that are not in my control. Would you still agree with that?
I was very wise. Only.
Yeah, you took some time with those answers.
Yeah, I think I really sat down because I wanted to nail this one. Even though it didn't get traction, it meant a lot to me, this interview, because I wanted to be as honest as possible in terms of happiness is such a strange thing, because I think whenever you strive for it, that's when you fail. Mm-hmm. And the concept of happiness is a strange concept altogether. So what's happening here?
Pour you some coffee.
All right. This depressing thing looked strange to me. Thank you very much. Okay, back to happiness. I think there's so many things in life that we can't control, and I think usually those are the things that make people miserable. And I think misery is inevitable. I think it's just a part of everyone's life. You have loved ones that maybe tragedy strikes, and sometimes maybe, let's say I walk on the street, I get hit by a car, and maybe I get paralyzed or something. There's so many things I can't control of. And I think when you begin to get stuck on them and you become frustrated because of things you can't control, you don't put energy into what really matters. And those are the things that, you can affect. And I think misery, as I said, is inevitable, but there are some choices we can choose what we suffer for. Mm-hmm. For example, I'm doing what I love. I'm working, and it's not that people think you're working with video games, or just playing all day and you're having fun all day. There are times where it's very, very hard, and there are times where we are suffering as well as players, as coaches, because when you go through those tough times, those are the things that shape you. But this is also a choice of what we suffer for. I think that the easiest way to explain this concept for me is, if someone wants to go to the gym, you go to the gym to suffer a bit, but you're gonna suffer either way. If you don't go to the gym, you don't exercise, you're gonna suffer later on in your life. You're gonna have health issues, you may not sleep well, and so forth. So I feel like you have to choose what you suffer for and accept that suffering is inevitable. And I think that's happiness for me.
Realizing that and then choosing the right things for you. Very interesting, yeah. I mean, that should be the idea, of course. A lot of people are not as fortunate to to do what they want to suffer for a living. Of course, here in esports, we are very fortunate in that regard. Do you sometimes feel like, because I know this sounds harsh, but we are the same age, or like I'm actually a bit older than you, and you know I'm 24, so I got into esports properly in 2017. I started suffering for esports in 2014, but before that, for example, I remember I worked in a retirement home for 2 months during the summer, you know, because my dad made me age 16. You now need to do a summer job stuff, and it was basically, you know, this guy for everything, and I had to work on a station with dementia, people that were riddled by dementia, like 30 people, and out of them like 21 had dementia. And for me, that really showed, you know, what does old age mean, not being able to move properly, what does having dementia means, you know, and some crazy things happened during that. But I feel like a lot of people in esports, specifically players, of course, never had an experience like that, because they, you know, got into gaming and the gaming career at 16, 17, and usually they are from, like, you know, middle class families and stuff. Do you feel like there's some missing reflection sometimes from people about how fortunate they are, and the bit more gratefulness that they can suffer for the game because it's just special?
I think, you know, on my part, I think about it very often, how fortunate we are. Like, everything was so random. Like, the fact that I'm a coach was pretty random. The fact that League of Legends worked out, you know, I've been through so much shit in the past, you know, where I was faced with the decision, should I give up or should I continue? When teams disbanded, when TeamSoloMebdi got banned as well. Like, I was always faced with the decision: should I continue or let it go? And eventually, the LCS came, and that faith was rewarded. And in terms of players not really appreciating the situation, I think it's really crazy that it's almost unnatural that you pull someone that's 17 from his home life, which usually the guys that are good at games are the ones that really go outside, yeah, and you pull them, you put them in the spotlight. It's very unnatural. I think it's hard to imagine, you know, sometimes you have those guys that really thrive in it, but sometimes you have guys that don't know how to handle it. And I think that's okay and that's normal. And I think it's the job of the coaching staff. I take that responsibility upon myself to make sure that my players have the tools to sustain a career, because the turnover for players is very small. Players don't stick around for that long in esports. You have a couple of them that have been around since the beginning, I guess, like Reckless and Soaz. But other than that, a lot of players tend to falter because they don't get these tools to pretty much harness what it is to be a pro player and truly get to this veteran status. And I pride myself on this, because a lot of the players that I've worked with, for example, even in the finals, there was like Jankos, Trashy, Mithi, Nuktak.
It's cold, by the way.
X, cold. I keep forgetting. You know, it's hard when you spend 2 years with a person, calling someone that, you know, I mean nothing negative with calling him that. It's just that that's what his name. He has. There's a little picture of him in my heart, and it says Trashy right under it. You know, so it's. I really take a lot of responsibility on this part, making sure that players really harness this idea of what their talent is. And I think it's super important in esports. Many young guys throw away what they have. They are too cocky, or they just stop giving a shit. Maybe they go out and they party a bit too much and so forth. And it's the responsibility of the teams, I believe.
Okay. Nice. A lot of sense now. I'm gonna skip a few questions. Okay, why was your historical figure that you most identify with Genghis Khan?
Genghis Khan. The only thing that stopped him was something that he had no control over. He conquered everything, and as long as I didn't conquer everything, I'm not gonna be done. So I want to win everything. I want to go on to win other regions. I want to be a person that has like a legendary status behind him. I want to leave a legacy. When I stop, when I'm 60 or whatever, when I'm 50, I don't know how long I'm gonna continue or how long League of Legends dies. I think if solo queue is gonna look like this, it's not gonna last long, but I want to leave a legacy behind, you know. I think the idea that's been in the back of my mind always is when I die, I want to be remembered. And Genghis Khan is definitely remembered, and the only thing that stopped him was disease, for being a bit too wild in the sack, but, you know, God bless him.
Certainly a way to look at things. You also said when asked who your real life heroes are, you answered, my parents. They fed me when I could not feed myself, so they pretty much saved my life multiple times.
Yeah, well, you know, my parents gave me everything. You know, they sacrificed so much to go to Sweden and to make sure that I have the best possible upbringing and the best possible conditions to become as successful as possible. My brother's the same. He's a dentist. He's competing in a, I don't know what the word for is, but he's in a body physique competition. So he's a dentist. He calls himself the buff dentist. He's a dentist, and he's like 5% body fat. His veins, he looks like Google Maps. Like, it's absolutely crazy. He's really like jacked, and he's super successful in what he's pursuing. And I think we owe that completely to our parents, because when they came to Sweden, they had absolutely nothing, and they figured it out. Even staring into the barrel of having nothing, they figured it out. And there was never a time where me or my brother were hungry, or we weren't clothed, or where we didn't have the conditions to move forward. So we are very fortunate.
But still, I guess the like class upbringing, or you guys weren't, you know, a rich family, or one of the richer ones in the class.
I think in terms of material things, no. Like, we had a computer that we shared amongst 3 people, because my mother also played games. Or still plays games. She plays World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, and she watches every game that I play together with my brother. My brother's the same. He plays a lot of games. Now he doesn't have that much time because he's the buff dentist, of course. But nevertheless, I think I was rich in the sense that I got all the love that I needed in terms of like the love of a mother that is just, you know, when I go home I feel like a child again, because she takes care of me in such a way. And my father gave me the tough love, basically about the hardships of hard work, and basically creating this identity and this body where if you put your mind to it, you can accomplish anything. So I was rich in love.
And learnings.
Yes, and learnings, yes.
The most important things of the childhood. That said, nowadays you list it as your one of your proudest possessions, a hublot, which is a very expensive. Perfect. And you obviously are very known for wearing very extravagant, very expensive-looking suits, always being one of the most well-dressed people on the desk. Froskorn is giving you competition, I have to say. Yeah. But it's a good competition, of course. Was at one point did you start doing that? Because I was looking like at old pictures of you still being a League player, and you were still, you know, with a cap backwards on and like shitty headset. But at one point you decided, okay, I'm going to suit up completely. Why did you make that decision?
I honestly don't know. Like, I wanted to be bold. I wanted to do my own thing. It was a mix of things. I'm trying to figure out what I really thought at the time. I remember watching all these extravagant rap videos where they have the watches, the chains, and the shirts, and I try to find a balance. And you know, I try to. I never really liked shopping. You know, shopping just sucks. So I try to make it more exciting, somewhat, by taking more risks, working with more colors. My choices are usually, they don't come with a lot of thinking process. It's just that I look at something and I'm like, okay, I can pull this off. And where it started, really, no idea. I just wanted to make a part of my life more interesting, pretty much.
So when I started looking more at the way I dress myself in clothes and stuff, at first when I bought like my first watches, they were always fake ones, but they would like look like expensive ones. Did you start with that as well? Because you didn't have like the money back then to pull off the real Hublot?
I remember the first watch. There's this website called King Ice, and there was like a watch that looked like it was completely blinged out, you know. And then a friend of mine, his father had like the kit to make the watch fit to my hand. And then when he was holding the watch, he accidentally pressed on one of the buttons, and then like disco lights began to flash, and I had no idea this was part of the light, and I was so fucking embarrassed because my friends were trolling me. And then whenever I'm wearing this watch and we were going out or doing something, they were like, hey, check this out, look at this watch, and they just clicked it on, you know, and it went on for like a good 1 minute. And there's no hiding it, you know, because if I put it in my pocket, it just kept going because the lights were just...
Disco ball in your pants.
Yeah, pretty much. Disco ball in my pants.
Should be a good pickup line. Hey, babe, have you seen my disco ball in my pants?
You can use it. I'm in a happy relationship. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's how those things started. Very interesting. And of course, we talked about this very briefly before at our very first interview at the LEC split. Your new coat that you really like to wear, your grandpa's coat. Is that like, obviously that's very special for you because of the relationship you had with him and the values he had?
He was amazing because he worked in a mine, and I think if I remember correctly, it was a coal mine, and that is like the worst job in terms of what kind of dangers you put yourself through. Like he worked there for many years, and he was the guy who always, when something needed to be done, no question, he took it upon himself, never complained about anything, just always worked super hard just to make sure that my mother's family have everything that they need. And this coat was something, you know, the coal miners, they had access to more VIP things because they were doing something so risky. Like my grandfather, in this mine, people, it was very common that people just died. A mine shaft collapsed and something happened, or a gas leak. There was a lot of ways to just die, you know. And my grandmother was telling me always that whenever he was home late, she was always worried because she could see like the train station through the window, and she could always like see him leave the train. And whenever he was late, she was always super worried and was at the brink of crying and just thinking the worst happened. And my grandfather was also smoking a lot, so breathing in all those toxins was not a good combination. So eventually he had problems with his lungs. But this jacket means a lot to me because it's a way for me to always remind myself of my background and my family. Because I think it's very easy when you move. I moved at an early age, and I mentioned earlier that I'm a very lonesome person. So I'm a person that struggles very hard with keeping in touch with people. So it's definitely an easy way, you know.
It's like a reminder for yourself. Basically, you don't always reach out to people, but you sometimes you look at a family photo and you think, oh yeah, or you look at old photo, like old friends and so.
Also, the jacket looks insane. Like I love this jacket. It keeps me warm in the coldest weather. I'm ready to go to LEC Russia. You know, I'm good. It's I love this jacket. I always wanted a fur coat, but you know, you have all this anti-fur, anti-leather movement, and it's more common on women's jackets than it is on male jackets. Usually, like if you buy a male jacket with fur, it's on the hoodie, or what it's called, on the hood. So I was lucky because it was perfect. It was what I looked for at the same time, and it fit somehow.
Sometimes life writes the best stories in that regard. But let's talk a bit about your time as a player. What maybe a few people don't even realize, you participated in the very first split of EU LCS ever to exist on Dragonborns as a top laner. The team didn't do so well. You guys placed 8th out of 8, despite playing with Shushay, who was obviously a former world champion at the time. Inspired.
Shushay. I love the guy, but he was not performing so well. This was old me talking, because at the time I was holding a grudge because we had one of the best players in Europe on the bench. We had Extinct. Extinct was the guy who joined NIP later as a top laner for some reason, and he was a mid laner that just started playing top for NIP because they had Bjergsen, and when he played top he was better than everyone, just like that. And I think that's what kind of drives me crazy about the Dragon Ball story. Is we have this guy on bench. He's getting paid the minimum wage, and then we have Shushay, just because he owns the team. There's not much to say, right? But Dragon Balls was a crazy time. I was practicing on a MacBook that I got from school, and this MacBook had only one USB port, so I had to use the MacBook keyboard.
Oh yeah.
And that was the disgusting one, the clickety-clacky one, you know? And it was a disaster. And then Hozan, our AD carry, had to use a laptop that we borrowed from Fnatic. It was Cyanide's laptop. And then eventually we gave up on practicing. We just played Heroes of Might and Magic all day. That's a very common game for people with Eastern roots to play. And we had 2 Polish people, and we were just playing Heroes of Might and Magic. So it was a good time.
You got to play LCS and got to play a lot of Heroes of Might and Magic, so it couldn't be that difficult. I also, when I first started playing League, I also played on a MacBook for like a year. I blame my early bronze, silver times on that MacBook keyboard.
Actually, I was rank 1 playing on a MacBook. So, God bless the MacBook. You know? I just boot camped it, you know, and then I finally found like this new revelation, you know, this dongle that converts one USB port into multiple USB ports, and then I could connect like a headset and all this jazz. So it was great. But what was so tricky about the Dragon Ball time is that my parents didn't allow me to quit school, so I had to practice really hard and go to school at the same time. And the commute to Cologne from Stockholm, like I come from Västerås. Yeah, I know. My city is called Västerås, and the commute to...
Wait, actually? Yeah. Like, I thought you were making a joke.
No, I'm not making a joke. My city is actually called Västerås. And the commute to Cologne was like 8 hours, 9 hours, and I had to travel twice, and I had to study at the same time, so I was really burning out. I was really burning out. Luckily, maybe unluckily, before the qualifier, because there was no auto relegation. The qualifier, I got to bootcamp for 1 week without any school, and I was in tip-top shape. I broke CS records, I broke every record, but my boys panicked, you know. I remember the moment when I knew the series was lost, was when my support, when we were 2-0, he did this at the camera. He held up one finger, you know. I was like, this cocky guy, this is not gonna end well. And then we lost 3-2, reverse swept. What pisses me off about that series to this day is that, you know, it was one of the longest series that has ever been played because, you know, Riot Games was indie company, you know. So the game, the servers died, and we just sitting there and waiting, and we played 5 games over the span of like 13 hours. And our manager did the smart thing of ordering food, but he did the dumb thing of giving that food to the enemies.
As well.
Yeah. He's like, oh, we ordered too much. Here, eat some. I was like, this mother.
This is war.
Yes. And then, I see these guys, they're on the pizza diet. They know what's up, they start playing. And my guys, everything went to shit.
You could have just like pulled, I don't actually watch a lot of Game of Thrones. I've only seen the first season. But, you could have pulled the guys standing on the wall, just like sitting out, the enemies. And they just starve to death, essentially. And then you win the series.
Yes, that should have been the plan. Just like make them even hungrier. Like just fucking fan the smell of salami towards them, and it would have been perfect.
Amazing. You said that 2 years ago that your trait that you dislike the most in yourself is your inability to see your own flaws. Does that still apply?
I don't know if I said that in a joking way. I'm a lot better at it now than I used to be. I think it's something that you just grow with. It's something you have to learn. Basically, reflecting on what you've done and taking responsibility upon yourself. My biggest flaw, I think, would be my obsession with things. Like I'm very scared to do things outside of League during the season because I just get obsessed. Like, for example, I tried Path of Exile. So this is a game that, I don't know if you've played, it's a game that has so much depth. Like every single build needs to be like perfect, and there's so many things to figure out, and that to me is super exciting. If there's a game like that, I'm like, I'm gonna be the best at this. I'm gonna win everything. I'm gonna be the best, and I have to tread very carefully because whenever I touch something, I can't let it go, and it's rough. So during the season, I tend to not do much more things than League because I need to stay focused.
Stay on your lane. Maybe it's a blessing and a curse because it enabled your entire career in the first place.
Yes. It's definitely a good thing. But I think it's very common in esports that people have a very obsessive behavior, and I can see that in all of my guys right now. You're just obsessed about something, you move on, and like Jizuki is the same. Like if he played a lot of other games before League, like he played World of Warcraft, played very, very well, and I think almost in every single player they have like this obsessive behavior. So maybe it's a good thing. It's a shit answer to this flaw question.
Yeah, it can be a curse as well if it's like the wrong thing that catches you. I still remember talking with Caps after Rift Rivals, and I bring this up multiple times because it was just so shocking to me. He had sleeping problems like a lot of players did after 2018 one when they had to fly back from LA. And Fnatic were all of a sudden in a complete slump, even though they were dominating before. And I asked Caps, what's going on? And he was like, yeah, well, we can't sleep. And so what I did, I sit up at night 4 a.m. in the morning, and what I do is go through all my matchups in my head again, and then I play some League with Hilly-san, and it's like, a 19-year-old guy, what do you do at 4 a.m. in the night? You play League.
Might as well.
Yeah, but that's the only thing he apparently did. So after your relatively quick stunt as a player compared to your coaching career, before you still formed or tried to form TeamSoloMebdi, what was like the intention behind everything? Was it just everyone else just sucks at this and I can do it better, or?
Well, the point was not to form like an organization. It's crazy because we had a really, really good offer on the table to bring one of the major organizations into League of Legends esports. So that was pretty disappointing in terms of us getting banned. You just lost faith in esports altogether, in League of Legends altogether when that happened. But the thing is, I was a victim of some trolling here and there by Jensen, and he was often on our TeamSpeak, and I knew what he was capable of as a player. He had this reputation about him that not a lot of people liked him, but I didn't really care. I just wanted to win shit. And the same thing was for Darkwing Jax. Darkwing Jax is a crazy cookie because whenever he wants to be rank 1, he gets rank 1. So you just piss him off the right way, he gets rank 1. And he has like this obsession times 1000. Like when it comes to like if someone does something wrong in game, he becomes really obsessed about that mistake and doesn't let it go, you know. And that's like on a very micro level, this obsession. And Darkwing Jax was fantastic. Jensen was fantastic. I wanted to play with Nuktak bot lane. That was our plan, because we were like, bot lane is so broken. Everyone sucks. We're gonna play bot lane. And we basically dominated, but Nuktak was 16 at the time. No beard, no crazy The Walking Dead hair. It was young Nuktak. And he was 16 at the time. And we brought him with a failure. And the main idea behind the team was just we wanted to qualify to the LCS.
We were talking about TeamSoloMebdi. Darkwing Jack, Jax, right? Obsessive, times 1000. One thing you mentioned, how you were on Jensen's int list. You know, like Jensen back in the day, named Incarnation was a burden on EU solo queue, threatening to dox people, amongst other things. And you were on his int list back then, and how did you get off that?
Well, basically, it was Incarnation was his resurrection. He was Vagod X.
Ah, right, yeah.
Well, he was Jensen, not Jensen. He was Wizix, and then Wizix was the band account. I don't know if how I guess bringing this up is not that bad. Like everyone knows this. It's very public if you want to. Like Jensen is a great person. You know, he's fantastic. He doesn't
officially reformed.
Yeah, he doesn't have a negative bone in his body, and he's super nice now. And he did fantastic things with Cloud9, and he beat me twice. You know, and now on Team Liquid, I'm excited for him because he finally won the title he deserves. But at that time, you know. Vagodex, Wizix. Basically, there was a TeamSpeak where everyone was hanging out, and Jensen was bothering me quite often, and I had the rights to kick people, ban people. And then he found out I banned him, and then I became a target. And then I got the Fizz treatment, the Fizz with fandom dancers, that treatment. So it starts off as serious, and then it just begins to run it down with the quickest build on the map. But what happened was, I managed to carry a game. I was playing Tristana at the time. I managed to carry a game when he was doing this. So this was like low-key, you know, he's respecting me a bit, you know, after this. And then me and Nuktak, we were discussing how we were going to make a team. We didn't want to play with our bot lane anymore because actually we wanted to play with our bot lane, but they decided to go with a different team. And we were like, okay, we're going to show them and we're going to play bot lane, we're going to stomp them. What players do we get? And he's like, Jensen. I'm like, are you sure? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, let's give it a chance. We invite him, and then of course when he's in my team, he's not gonna put me on an int list, you know. So that was the beginning. Okay. But what was so crazy about the time was that we were banned while we were at the airport.
Yeah.
So we drove 4 hours, got a call. I don't remember from who. I think it was Brandon Beck, but I don't remember who it was. But it was so strange because my guys, we had the parameters of what we needed to do in order to play, and everything was set up, and then everything was pulled from under us at the last minute. And I invested a lot of money, a lot of time into it, and if I was just told at the beginning, you know, these guys, you're not going to be able to play with them, you know. And those were the big arguments that they chose when they permabanned my guys. They just brought up things from the past that I brought to the table pretty much already. I said, these are the things that happened, is this going to be fine? And the parameters was, if you don't get flagged for ban, then everything will be fine. And then in the call, I was told, you know, 3 of you guys got tribunal banned. And at the time, if you got tribunal banned, there was a tribunal case. And there was no tribunal case. They couldn't give it to me because they couldn't disclose that information, which sounded kind of iffy to me. And also, you know, it was bothersome because the third guy they banned, it was really weird that they banned him. Like he's the most non-toxic guy ever. Like he's like the level of niceness of Steve. You know, he's a super nice guy, super nice. And they chose to ban 3 people because they just wanted to disqualify TeamSoloMebdi, you know. And this was a large dent, you know, in everything that we worked for. But I think it put us on paths to do other things. You know, Jensen is now winning titles over in North America. I'm very happy for him. I'm doing fine, I guess. I'm doing well. And Darkwing Jax is keeping busy in his hometown. I think I remember the last time I asked him what he's up to, and he's basically helping people figure out their tax papers and figuring out their papers in his hometown that have a difficulty with the Swedish language. So he's doing a lot of positive things, right? So everyone figure out their own path. But it still bothers me to this day that we got treated like that, you know? And I think it was just regret. You know, they had this position where they regret allowing us to play. I guess there's a lot of moving pieces, maybe some higher ups and Riot were like, what the hell, how did this get approved? And then we got they pulled the rug from under us. So it still bothers me to this day.
Were you worried at that point that, you know, this whole esports thing was just a big fluke and you shouldn't invest any more time and money and effort in it?
I was pretty committed. I wanted to continue, but it was hard because I didn't know where to go to next. And then I got the proposition from Dragonborns to be a substitute, and I thought that was super cool. They basically needed a sub that can play every role because they couldn't play every single scrim. So they basically subbed me, hey, play support, play AD, play top. And then they had like some issues with the top laner, come play LC and LCS, and I was like, okay, let's go. I have to go to school, but I'll figure it out somehow. And then the path continued. And the path always found a way to continue if you wait and you take your opportunities.
I feel like that's a very general rule that applies to esports. You know, when one door closes, usually a new one opens. Yeah. If you did everything right in your time.
I think when guys ask me, like, how do you get into esports? I always say, get noticed, keep working hard, and the right people will notice. Because on my end, you know, I work on Vitality now, and we want to hire the best people all the time. Like, if someone is fantastic at what they do, and they can provide something extra, then you're going to get hired instantly. The issue is not that people are not needed. The issue is that no one is bold enough to view esports in a way where, how can I improve esports? Yeah. How can I contribute? And then afterwards, I believe that hard work always pays off because the right people will always notice. That's what I tell my players as well. You know, in the past, if you're playing in a team where you have like one super talented player and then 4 players that maybe aren't as good or something like this, I always tell them, even though you feel like the others are not giving as much as you have to keep working hard, because if you keep working hard, you're going to eventually surround yourself with people that do the same. And that's the promise that I give to all of my players. And I just think that's how the world works.
I agree. I mean, I remember trying to do the same essentially. You know, when I first got to LCS back then, I just tried to be the one that produces the most content, and then obviously had a background in journalism anyway, so I tried to apply my skills accordingly. But that was like always my number one rule. I want to be the one that makes the most and then is the most noticed inevitably, because you know, if you put everything on Reddit but you have 10 interviews and then like 5 do well, then you have 5 interviews that did well, but the other guy, you know, does 6 interviews, 3 do well, it's 5 versus 3. Who gets more noticed? You know, that's kind of a good rule to have. Or like Patrick, for example, you know, Patrick on H2K, formerly known as Sheriff. Interesting name change still. You know, didn't have the best split on H2K in summer last year, then got picked up by Origin, and now plays second, so good rule to have.
He was on my radar actually. He was one of the players I was curious about. He did very well on the ladder, and even in the games that H2K managed to do well in, I think he was the shining light. So I'm happy for him. He's good.
I'm very much happy about that as well. We're going to talk about Vitality in just a sec, but looking at the way that LEC looks right now, and you look at Wanda being, in my opinion, best Western top laner right now, my MVP vote number 1 even, just ahead of Caps. You have Mickey also on G2, hopefully, who's going to do well at MSI if his arm is okay. You have Colt on Origin placing second, and you have Cobbe, who was arguably the best bot laner at this split. and Senkang's also played on Rogue, I guess. And you had all these 5 players playing together with you, and you guys obviously qualified for Worlds 2016. Do you sometimes look back at that time and go, did I get everything out of them? Or, you know, what's your take now reflecting on your time at Spice? Because I feel like that was the most crucial time in you really becoming one of the big EU coaches.
I think as a group, we definitely we peaked as a group. But it was so strange because for me, I knew that the dynamic needed to change, but it didn't feel right to replace anyone. It didn't seem deserved at all, because everyone put their heart and soul into the team, and I knew from my perspective that our dynamic it had run its course. And sometimes you're spending time with people, and their expectation of you are things that maybe you want to improve on. Everyone was set in their ways. And I think whenever you're set in your way, even though you would want to make changes, sometimes it's just too hard. And I think this could be said about everyone. We had this dynamic, we spent so much time together, we played so much together. They stayed together for 2 full years. I left after the 3rd split. It was a group where it was hard. When a dynamic is around its course, it's hard to improve on yourself. And I knew if everyone was in a different dynamic, and if everyone got to play with a different group of people just to get a fresh perspective and to get an opportunity to reinvent yourself, I knew everyone could become so much more. So when I left Splice, I was very certain that the guys would go their separate way eventually because of how the dynamic worked. But this was not because I blame one individual or believe less in one over the other. I knew everyone was very capable of doing great things. Jonas took his time off. He went to Brazil for 1 month. Even in Unicorns of Love, on a struggling team, he completely reinvented himself and did amazing things that everyone noticed. On a very struggling Unicorns of Love team, everyone could see that he was a good jungler. Yeah. And that's a very difficult thing to do. Making people know that you're good while you're playing for a team that sucks, that's
a jungler in particular.
That's very tricky. And Jonas did that very, very well. Kobe, I think he needed to just work on his confidence. I remember we played the G2 finals, and I always was telling him, the more you believe in yourself, the better you're going to play. And I feel, looking at him from afar, I can see how much he's grown, and he always had that in him, you know. And now he was the MVP for the AD carry role, and very well deserved. He finally had the room in a team to become the big fish. And the Splice roster that we had, you know, we got to Worlds. We were bleeding when we were at Worlds. We got to Worlds. We got to there with band-aids keeping, like tape keeping a ship together, you know. It was band-aid solution after band-aid solution, and I think we were all a bit blind to our issues when we resigned for the next year, because we managed to still find success. Like the Unicorns of Love series went to 5 games. Could have ended either way. The H2K series went to 5 games. Could have ended either way. It was a crazy split where a lot of things went right for us. But I knew the guys really had it in them, you know. So I'm, as a coach and as a person that truly cares about these guys, it brings me a lot of joy to see them do well. Because there was a time where people were calling for their heads, you know, kick them, replace them, and it's after our first split, it's probably easy to say that because they don't see what I saw, and I'm happy and proud of all of them.
Now, a lot of people did get to see what you saw in the Vitality lineup. Of course, the refreshed one, the first split was Vitality. We'll talk about that one maybe. But your second one, and of course with a new Vitality lineup consisting of four former Giants members, Jizuke, Attila, Jack Troll, and Gilius back then. How did you scout them, and how were you so confident so early on? Because I remember looking at that team, and I had watched national leagues, but when a national league team comes up, usually you would expect that most LCS teams would do better, and a lot of people predicted you guys to place at the bottom, and you surprised everyone big time.
I think their life stories are so interesting. The way they got to the position they were at told me a lot about their character, that they are willing to prove everyone wrong. They have this extra essence in them that really pushes them over the edge when they are faced with a situation where everyone thinks they're gonna lose. Even the RNG game, I told the guys, your fucking life story is about just you guys defeating the odds. The fact that you were born, that's like 1 in, 10 million. The fact that you got here into the LCS is also very slim. Look how many League Legends players there are. And now people think that we're going to lose to RNG, but the odds are not that bad, in comparison to what we've defeated. So their life story really spoke to me. And the same rings true now. I think, this alteration of Vitality is where I've had the most fun with work that I've ever had. I really, really enjoy spending every moment with them, and it's enjoyable to go through the hard times, it's enjoyable to go through the good times, and I think that's super, super important when we spend so many hours together. We work 14 to 12 hours together every single day, and if we didn't enjoy each other's company, it would be a disaster. So I put a lot of effort and energy to make sure that we have a good culture for everyone to be in. But at the beginning, when I signed the guys, Cabo was skeptical, Vitality was skeptical, but the first split of Vitality was pretty much, I gave them a prediction for what was going to happen, and they, after these predictions came true, they pretty much gave me full power, full reins, full power, full support, and this is something that I really need as a coach. And I spoke about how their invigorating story about how they got to where they are is something that was very inspiring. My other option was to get a bunch of veterans, get a bunch of names that everyone knows about, form a team where, it's like guys that you recognize, on paper they might be good, but on paper they will never be the best. Yeah. So those teams are never exciting to me. Get a bunch of players that are not going to beat the Caps of this world, or like Perks at the time, or just beat the top players. Yeah. And I want to have the potential to beat the best. If that doesn't exist, I have a hard time finding interest in a player. So when a player has peaked, no longer interesting for me. And my guys, they have a lot to learn, and we have a lot to learn from our previous split, and we haven't reached our peak yet. So as long as that's the case, the project is exciting to me.
Very excited for the future of Vitality in that regard now. You guys also went to Worlds, also didn't make it out of group stage, but obviously the context of everything, the group itself, it was a way bigger achievement. I would argue than your time with Splice, or like your World's performance with Splice. Was that your personal peak so far, Vitality at Worlds, and having a good showing?
For sure, yeah. Like when we went to Splice, the one thing we managed to do was take a game of RNG. So I'm maintaining my 50% win ratio against RNG, which I'm happy about. And then we faced Samsung, and they absolutely stomped us. Like Samsung was too good in the group. And then it was weird because we got the exact same group. The guys were blaming me, the Yamato, no, this is the Yamato group. Just putting us in this shit again. And it was definitely a journey. It's always fun to go to the World Championship and get smacked around by all the teams that We're doing things like region-wise. It's crazy. Always when we're boot camping and practicing against the Chinese teams, the Korean teams, I feel like always they're a bunch of steps ahead. But then when you're playing them on stage, it goes back to, you can kind of go back to the roots. So it was a rough time. But to go back to your question, yes, the peak is indeed the 3-3 in group.
Of course, very unfortunate to see NA win against...
Both games are so over. It's unbelievable. The game against Cloud9, we were like 10k gold ahead.
That itself, but also the fact that then RNG also lost to Cloud9, right? And if RNG would have won against Cloud9, you and RNG would have been through, I'm pretty sure. Wasn't that like the situation?
I think Cloud9, we would have to beat Cloud9 regardless, because they would beat us in the tiebreaker.
Oh, yeah.
Because they would be 3-3, but 2 wins against us and 1 against Genji. But we would have to beat Cloud9 regardless.
Didn't have a choice in that regard. Unfortunate, but hey, maybe you'll get your revenge one day. Next time. The World's 2018 speech got you really noticed, especially outside of EU as well. Was that a moment you hold to very high regards as well in your memories?
I think people are giving me a bit too much credit. I know that, if I was playing on G2 and Fnatic and I get the question, "Oh, did Yamato speech help you?" I would be really angry. Because I just wanted to use the opportunity to just speak on the behalf of our team and what we believed in. And it was my opportunity to truly, speak to my players and speak to the organization. That's usually what I use interviews for, to when the players listen to it, that they can relate to it and can kind of connect it with what we're doing in our everyday life. So this was the purpose for me, that as long as we stay true to ourselves, we can do much more than we accomplished on this specific day when we lost against Cloud9. I know that I got a lot of recognition and a lot of credit. I even got to hold the MVP trophy at the World Finals for it. And I probably got invited to the desk at the World Finals because of it. So, it worked out. But maybe a bit too much credit. But those words, I really believed in what I said.
It was a very good speech still. Really, really phenomenal stuff. So you are one of the people that does give, I would say, one of the highest amount of interviews in like the entire LEC scene. You're always very keen to speak and to present yourself in front of a camera, but whether it's right or third party, of course. Why do you have like such a natural affiliation to give out a word on your own thoughts?
I just like to talk. I think when it comes to me being on broadcast, I am super lucky. Like, they gave me a chance early on. They liked what they saw and they gave me more and more opportunities. And I think this helped me grow a bunch. But before I did the broadcast for the first time, I casted about 300 games in front of camera in Swedish. So I casted the NA LCS, the EU LCS, and the World Championship. And we did analyst desk and we did everything
in-house
from a little studio. This was the time in my life where I picked up smoking because we had only 2-minute breaks. And I was like, okay.
Tell me about it.
To sustain myself, I'm going to smoke cigarettes. Yeah. So I don't eat, don't do anything. And just, we had to do like 9 hours of straight broadcast. So it was absolutely like nuts, And this gave me a lot of experience, good experience, even though I think I lost probably like 10 years of my life doing it.
Come to media, yeah.
Because the studio was in the warehouse in the middle of nowhere, so I stayed in a shitty hotel in the middle of nowhere with like, when I ate breakfast, I just see, this guy is doing meth, this guy is doing heroin, this is a bad hotel. So this is where I stayed, and this gave me a lot of experience, and I think this is what Riot appreciated, and I'm super, super lucky. I'm ready for the day when the invitations stop, because I just feel super fortunate that I get to be there at the finals. I don't know how many finals I've done. I have lost count. I think 6 of them or something. It's been crazy.
A very regular guest for a player/coach.
Yeah.
So, being in front of the camera, does that mean though that after your potential career as a coach, and of course, there's no age limit on being a coach. You can be a coach until you're 70 and still do well. Just look at, Ancelotti and so. Actually, Ancelotti is not even 60. I never realized that. He's like in his mid-50s. He just looks old. But could we ever expect you as like a regular desk guest or something like that instead of being a coach?
I've considered casting as a career option. It seems I can imagine it's a lot less stressful, because with coaching you are responsible for everyone's performance and your own. And when it comes to casting, you are focused on yourself. It's like playing tennis almost. You just improve yourself, you focus on your own thing, and you work well with the people that are around you. But when it comes to coaching, it's tough to improve on yourself because you're the authority figure, and sometimes it might be difficult for people in your circle to give you feedback, even though I ask for it a lot of the times. It takes a lot of work to get that feedback, and then you have to keep track of everyone's performance, make sure that everyone is on the right path. But that responsibility is also a part of why I love the job. I think coaches have a unique opportunity to truly affect everything. I think if I was the perfect coach, then we could win everything. And with that in mind, it's always exciting because you can always find new ways to improve everything. There's always things you can tweak. You can find, the new recipe. Black Cat just passed us, so it means bad luck.
No. She's just eyeing the camera. Maybe she lets it fall over, and that would mean bad luck for us, for sure.
Yes.
No.
But to summarize the point, I forgot my point. Black Cat is just too distracting.
Too fast.
I hope they can figure it out.
If you were a perfect coach, then you would win everything, and that it's a good motivator for you. Yes. You did mention, however, that you were led on the desk, so to speak, or were pushed by Riot pretty early on. I remember one of the first times realizing that exist within the league scene, that you exist within that context. I was watching Worlds 2015, and you probably know what's gonna come now. You were on the desk, and Dash, essentially also very young at the time, called you out. It was a situation, LGD was playing Origin, and the winner would have to face SKT. Yeah. And he asked, you were on the desk with Monty and I think a Riot caster at the time, and he asked, what could LGD, if they were to win, do against SKT? And then you were like, well, Dash, nothing. And then he pushed you on it. Okay. Okay.
So basically the situation was this. We hadn't seen LGD play at all. This was the first game that they're going to play in the group stage. And the claim was that LGD is very inconsistent. LGD, and then the question he's asking, what can LGD show as one of the tournament favorites in this one game to you, Yamato, that they can beat SKT? And the entire claim is that they are inconsistent. And they're not going to prove that they're consistent over the span of one game. Yeah. So I put it simple. I said, no, nothing. They cannot show me anything in one game if they're inconsistent or not, because if they play great, I don't know what's going to come next. I need to see 6 games, right? Yeah. But I simplified it too little. And he took this opportunity to come after me. And this is what Dash does well, right? He makes sure people are accountable for what they do. But at the same time, I took that opportunity to speak, publicly, and I think I used the opportunity to get something good out of it, because even though I think that specific situation was uncalled for, it made me think about what kind of preparation I put into what I wanted to present. Because in Europe it was very easy. All these teams, I practice against them, I play against them. I knew I could just wake up, don't need to do rehearsal, just come in there. What are we talking about? Okay, this and this. Okay, I can talk about 15 other things. You know?
Have the knowledge.
Yeah. So LGD, the one thing I had in my mind was, okay, they play around TP, Godvi is really, really good, and they are inconsistent as shit, because that's what the LPL casters told me. So it was very, very simplified, and I was maybe a bit too focused on throwing punchlines But maybe that's also a good thing, because I did get noticed, even though there was this YouTube thing about Dash calling me out, and everyone got angry because I said Cloud9 would go 0-6. You know, this only good things came out of it. I became better at what I want to do on the desk, and I got some, you know, some fame, regardless of how you get it. You know, if Cloud9 fans don't like me, you know, God bless them. You know, that means they're thinking about me. I'm in their head. It's just free real estate, you know.
It's free real estate. That's amazing. Yeah, Carlos literally tweeted that earlier today, that people can't even be unhappy about G2 participating in anything, because if G2 wins and you're a fan, you're happy, and if you hate them, but then you're also happy if they lose. You know, like, yeah, it's win-win.
It's perfect. I remember this thing about, I don't know who it was. I think, yeah, it was the manager of Elvis Presley. He basically they sold merchandise, but his manager also sold I Hate Elvis Presley merchandise. Because there's always going to be, you know, that kind of reaction when you are working at that scale. So in hindsight, you know, I'm happy if people just have an emotional reaction when it comes to me. You know, there was a time where a lot of the Spanish fans were after me because I was very harsh when it came to Giants, and I was also very harsh in terms of Expeke and his play with Origin. So I was saying that he's a weakness when I was on the desk, and that he's an issue. And people, you know, Expeke has an army behind it. You know, they came after me. I love Expeke. You know, he's a great guy. But I'm on the desk to speak my mind, right? And that's also positive. But what's bittersweet about, or no, even only sweet about this situation was when we actually faced Origin. I proved it because we beat them twice in the regular split when they were undefeated.
So you figured them out and got to prove it on stage as well, which of course is usually the best way to prove things, by actually performing better. No
Spanish fans were around at that time, you know.
Not anymore at that point. On that note, though, do you think that the scene overall, you know, with all this money coming in and these big names and, you know, these big sports organizations and these big sponsors in LEC, do you think that speaking your mind and being very open and sometimes very harsh with your criticism has kind of died down within the league scene? Because, you know, that's something that I've been hearing from a lot of, well, at least a few veterans. You know.
I think, you know, for me, what I've learned is that sometimes I've made my criticism much harsher than it needed to be, or I didn't convey it the right way, because sometimes, you know, the gain you can get from, let's say, flaming someone is not something that's really sustainable, you know. I think there's a way to phrase things. I've been, you know, I'm a big fan of Joe Rogan. I watch every single of his podcasts. There's a lot of people that do, and he has a way of communicating his opinion, honest and brutally, but at the same time, it's something that you can't hate him for, you know? There's no added fluff or no added salt. There's nothing to it. It's just honest, you know? And this is something that I've tried to do more personally. But when it comes to the league as a whole, I think it's just because of the personalities that are within it. I guess maybe the league is missing Forgiven, because there's still some banter going around. We had Maxwell flaming people, and then him imploding, and then and then we have Perks with his cocky tweets celebrating 2-0 weekend with a steak and then losing. You know, it's there's still some of that going around, but I think it's a lot less like hostile. Like you can banter and flame people, but it's not like fuck you kind of thing, you know.
People don't actually hate each other, you know. It's just it's banter, it's entertainment.
Yeah, pretty much, you know. Exactly that. It's entertainment, and I think everyone views it as such.
Of course, that's a healthy way to have it at the end of the day, you know. If that's the case, I'm very happy to hear that from your perspective as well. One last thing, we already mentioned how you'd like to be in the spotlight at times. You have your own YouTube channel, which of course you get to plug YamatoCannon on YouTube. You recently did a video on how to get into esports. And I looked at that channel, and the amazing thing about YouTube is that you can sort by oldest videos. And in your case, 10-year-old videos, literally 10 years old, would pop up of you playing Flash games and trying to stream them to people. And one game in particular was very popular. You did a lot of videos on Dino Run. Yes. And so what's the story behind that? You were 14, 13 at the time?
So there was this website called Congregate. So it just had a bunch of Flash games. Right. And on this website there was achievements. And whenever there's something to like win or to show or to flash on other people, then I get crazy about it. And I was just playing Dino Run to get these achievements. And that's what I did, just Flash games. There was a trend where everyone was playing Flash games. Go on this website, we're going to play 1v1, bumper cars or whatever shit. So the story is not that interesting. It's just me being a kid, playing Flash games, wanting achievements. And, my YouTube channel, I got plugging it or not plugging it. My YouTube channel is more about just keeping myself busy. I'm right now doing this thing where I'm trying to learn chess. And I'm keeping track of my own, I'm recording the footage of me practicing chess just to kind of keep track of progress, how I am and my own progress. And I've noticed things like, okay, sometimes I'm playing in a lazy way, that's a waste of time. I'm playing in a way where I'm not focused. I am just playing mindlessly and I'm not learning. And this to me is very intriguing. So I want to do like a bunch of series where I want to learn skills that can be useful and interesting. Now I started with chess. What I want to do when I've become good at chess, maybe I'm 1800, 1900 rating or something like this. In a perfect world, I get maybe international master or something, but I think it's maybe a bit too much.
Maybe ask Vizichochi for advice there.
Yes. My idea is that when I've become good at chess, I continue and maybe I want to learn how to play guitar and I record that footage and I keep track of that. Or then I want to learn how to paint and just a bunch of shit,
It's like an open diary, essentially.
Yeah, pretty much. And I want to have more skills, pretty much. Right now, I know everything about league, I know a lot about coaching, but I want to have more hobbies and I want to try to just learn more skills, use my obsessiveness for something positive.
I also think that's something very common in esports, that you reach a certain age and you've been in the scene or like you've established yourself, you're safe and secure and you can focus on working your job, and then you realize, okay, I've spent 5 maybe 10 years of my life trying to get into this and making it, etc., and like performing certain skills and honing them, that you then realize, hey, there are other things in life that you maybe should check out.
Yes, for sure.
But you always had that trend of like wanting to present yourself. That's what I meant with the old YouTube channel. You also did a series on like League of Legends A to Z. You wanted to play every champion.
I just gave up.
Yeah, you gave up after like 4 games.
Yeah, it was just sometimes I have too crazy ideas. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna analyze every game at the World Championship. Like, this was a big mistake because I made that claim, I made it public, and I was like, shit. Yep. After 10 games, I'm like, I'm getting acute bronchitis, my lungs are all fucked up. I'm like, I made this commitment, I'm going to finish. Last time I made such a commitment, A to Z, I forgot about it, and luckily everyone did too, so God bless, but...
Good job me bringing it up again.
it's kind of similar to what you said, right? You want to do the most, I feel like sometimes you do crazy shit just to stand out. It's like when I saw the Reddit post, Yamato has analyzed every game at MSI. Oh, what a fucking idiot, in the sense of why did he commit to this, And that headline alone is kind of gratifying and supporting crazy behavior in a bad way, I guess.
We're all just people on the internet watching other people do even crazier things and then go, hey, maybe I should top that. And that's how Jackass came to be.
Exactly. Exactly. It's always fun to pioneer something, to be the guy that does something the best or the most or the longest or whatever. It's always fun.
I hope this is the longest interview we've done so far. Otherwise, I would be very much impressed. Like, at least maybe in terms of real life interview, you have those sessions with like Thorn and like, podcasts, but those don't count unless they're real life, and then like I get screwed. But anything else you wanna throw out there? Where do you see yourself in like 5 years?
holy moly.
Yeah.
I hope, I'm more fit. This is something that I need to do better. Sometimes, I use this excuse for myself. Oh, there's a big patch. I need to put time on it and don't have energy. This is an excuse that I can't allow myself to do. I hope I'm more fit. I hope I have a bigger paycheck. I hope I don't start losing my hair. I like my hair.
Same.
5 years, maybe engaged. Who knows? I don't know. It's a tough question, but I imagine I have either 1 or 2, maybe 3 LEC titles if I figure out the recipe. So if I'm titleless in 5 years, I'm going to be super, super disappointed.
Damn.
So that's the one.
That's the one. Anything you want to say to the people out there? Any motivational messages?
I think I'm going to just quote past me. I think the chase for happiness it always ends in misery. It's not a chase you want to do. And I think, in line with people wanting to, you mentioned earlier that some people have jobs that they don't want to do. They're working and wasting their life away on things that they don't want to do. I think sometimes you need to take that risk, and sometimes people can't. I understand that too. They have a family to support, maybe they have people that rely on them. This I understand too. But when you are faced with that opportunity where you can take a risk, you should take it. And even if everything goes to shit, you wait for the next opportunity and you just take it. Because work is a big part of life. We spend most of our time working, and if you're doing something that's not rewarding, that's not bringing you joy, or not, it doesn't improve you as a person, then, I feel like that's truly a position where you're unhappy. And I've been very lucky that I managed to transition so easily into what I love doing. But I can imagine on your end, you took a big leap of faith into doing what you love, and you are doing your best to seize the opportunity, right? Because time flies.
Yeah.
It really does.
It really does.
So take a chance.
Take a chance.
Yes, take a chance.
I can highly recommend that as well. Thank you so much for your time. What are your thoughts on Ibrahimovic?
I love the man. He's been an inspiration, because if you're in Sweden, then there's Zlatan. That's who everyone knows and loves. Like it's just a Swedish thing to love Zlatan. And if I said anything else, I wouldn't be able to go back to the country. I would just lose my passport. They should. I'm at the point where I think they should put Zlatan on money. Like he's representing Sweden. We have Zlatan and IKEA, and that's about it.
Maybe in the future you and Reckless will join in there.
Hopefully. I think Zlatan is definitely a treasure, and I think his book is a well of knowledge. There's a lot of good things, so I recommend it.
I Am Zlatan. It's available everywhere. I do recommend it as well. It's very good. It was a pleasure talking to you. We're gonna spend some more time or like just a few minutes talking without the mic on, and we'll just have like the patrons running through the credits, because they are of course the people that make all of this possible. So thank you so much for your support. We hope you enjoyed this very first episode of the Esports Interview, a very huge title for hopefully a huge project to come. And again, thank you so much, Yamato, for your time, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. See you guys then. Bye bye. We'd especially like to thank Krzysztof Bujnovic, Thomas Göttel, Etienne, Erich Althaus, Lukas Legal, Lazy Raven, Lama Vyuta, and Adam Novosviat for your very special support, and of course also all the people whose names you see scrolling past you. Without you guys, we would have closed down probably a while ago. So thank you so much for your help. Thank you.